Hey everybody. Now at this point in the American Civil War, it is April of 1863 in Northern Virginia. The Battle of Fredericksburg happened 4 months previous with that horrible Union defeat. General Burnside ordered the Mud March after that, which didn't go well, and he has resigned at this point as leader of the Army of the Potomac. Command was then given to Fighting Joe Hooker. And what he has an idea of is he was going to take the majority of his 120,000 man army, march them 12 miles to the west to a town called Chancellorsville. And once there, they'd be able to make a much easier crossing of the Rappahannock River, and they would be able to get the army across, most of it at least, and they'd be able to form up on Lee's flank side theirs and be able to form up and push him off the heights above Fredericksburg. Now, that in itself was a pretty good plan. And Lee was in a very precarious position. Not only was he outnumbered, it was really bad. He had the Battle of Fredericksburg with 78,000 men. He didn't have that many because of the casualties, of course. But then President Davis had received information that there was supposedly a siege happening in Suffolk, Virginia, about 100 miles south. And so he had earlier had ordered Lee to detach the Confederate First Corps under General Longstreet and send them 100 miles south to Suffolk. Meanwhile, Lee is now facing the entire Army of the Potomac with one of his corps, the Jackson's Second Corps, with 45,000 men against more than double that amount. And so the Confederates are seeing these movements, and most of the armies, several of the Union Corps across the Rappahannock at this point. And one night where Jackson and Lee are looking over the map on what to do with the situation, General Jeb Stuart, the Confederate cavalry commander, came charging in completely out of breath, saying their flank is up in the air. And what it meant was, on the far right of the Union Army, there was the Union 11th Corps. They had not entrenched. They were in camp, but there was no preparations for any form of defense. They were not anticipating needing a defense, so they had not been ordered to entrench. And Stuart said their flank is up in the air. They are completely unprotected. And Jackson had this, in what could be considered at the time an insane idea, to take the majority of his corps, march around the Union position, and hit the Union Army in that particular spot. And Lee went along with it. He left 10,000 men under General Early on the top of Mary's Heights, and he took the remaining 35,000 men of his corps, under order of silence, marched his men around, and half of it under darkness, around the Union right flank. Now, there were reports coming into Hooker. This was not completely unknown to the Union at the time. They were just saying, "Now these guys are on the move," and Hooker's attitude was like, "They're retreating. We outnumber them 2-1. What are they really going to do?" And so he didn't take it seriously. I mean, Jackson was so serious about this, he didn't even let the men talk during this time. It was around the late afternoon of May the 2nd, where the 11th Corps, they're in their camp, starting to make dinner, when all of a sudden they see deer and a couple of the animals come rushing out through their camp. And then out of nowhere, they're blasted with the Confederate rebel yell. The entire rebel army is coming at them and hitting them on their flank position. More on that to come.